Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am thrilled to share a new illustration with you guys. If you can sense a certain level of passive aggressiveness in my voice, that is because this illustration, it was quite the struggle. I am amazed that I'm sitting here doing this voiceover because I did end up finishing it, and spoiler alert, I actually kind of like it. As it turns out, it made me question my life choices. I was like, why? It tested me, y'all. You've heard of the ugly stage in a painting that every piece inevitably has to go through. This piece has a fugly stage, okay? Like, it's bad, and I'm embarrassed to put it out there, but I am doing it for you guys because you know what? I love a good redemption arc, okay? And this piece has a redemption arc, at least in my humble opinion. So I've been trying to do this thing where I go through my old sketchbooks and I try to see if there's a sketch in there that piques my interest again. I remember that I had done this little thumbnail and I have always wanted to work on it, and I decided now is the time. So I took the sketch and tried out a number of different iterations. I tried changing up the expression, I tried changing up the composition and showing the character as more of a full figure in the composition, and I tried to change up the pose by having the character hold a cat, which I thought could be interesting. But in the end, I ended up with something pretty similar to the original initial sketch, with the exception of the eyes now going off to the side as opposed to staring like into the camera. So after I had finalized the drawing, I did a color comp to figure out my colors. I had always envisioned this piece as a greenish blue piece. I transferred the drawing and I started by doing a wash in watercolor. I wanted a smooth gradient for the background, going from a darker blue on the top to a lighter, more yellowish green color towards the bottom. And then after I laid down the background, I went in and dropped some of the colors for the character, using my color comp as a guide. And I really liked how it looked at this stage. I felt like this was one of my more successful initial watercolor passes. I feel like I usually feel fairly confident right around this stage, but let me tell you, from this point, it is a struggle. So yeah, from this point on in this piece to almost the end of the video, you will see me struggle so hard with the face. It goes through the ringer. Yeah, when I started rendering the face, I think maybe I just went in a little bit too hard and too dark. It just started to look really muddy. The biggest mistake I made for sure is going in too dark with the white of the eyes. I wanted them to sit like back in space, but I think I definitely went a little bit too dark. So I think in response to that, I started going in darker and darker on the face. And I will say I was very confused with my lighting. I wanted it to look as if there was some kind of uplighting situation, something illuminating from below. So I guess logically the undersides of the planes would be lighter, but I can't really wrap my head around that lighting scenario because I only understand how to render from like a more typical light from above, where the shadows are being cast below the object. So I didn't know where to like place my shadows. I'm genuinely like super embarrassed to even show this and put this video out there because I can see how bad it is. And I know most paintings go through an ugly stage, but this piece, it's on another level. Like, man, it really goes through a journey. So after I messed up the face going in with watercolors, trying to render it, I realized that there's nothing I can do further from this point in watercolors because I just can't keep making it darker. It's already dark enough as it is. I need to be able to lighten up the values. So this is when I go in with color pencils. I am so grateful to have color pencils in my arsenal. At first, I was a little bit timid with the color pencils. I wasn't really sure what to do. And I have a thing, as much as I love color pencils, I definitely have leaned on them to help me finish my illustrations. I don't love the texture sometimes. If I could get away with working mostly in watercolors, I would, but it seems that I can't in recent years, so this is why I resort to using color pencils. I love color pencils, don't get me wrong, but I just wish I could maintain the smooth texture of just using watercolors as long as possible, because once you go in with color pencils, it adds additional texture and it adds like a kind of barrier on the paper, which makes it harder for you to use like other media over top of it. But anyway, I was a little timid at first. I wasn't really sure what to do, but I realized that I just needed to lighten up the face. I needed to lighten up the face. I needed to lighten up the eyes. I couldn't decide if I wanted the eyes to look a little bit more like open and have the expression be a little bit more like a surprised expression, or if I wanted the eyelids to be a bit more closed and give it more of like a sleepy kind of a look. I just could not for the life of me decide. And maybe it's just me, maybe I am really picky with that, but I felt like with this piece, the eyes were kind of the money shot here. And because I couldn't get the eyes to read right, I was so frustrated. So here I am still struggling with the face, still struggling with the eyes, but I am recognizing I need to move on with the rest of the piece. So here I went in with markers. I bring in markers because why not? I feel like this piece is kind of a lost cause. So let's just throw everything we have at it and see what we can do. So I brought in the markers. It allows you to darken values and apply color in a very quick way. And I also like how when you use markers, it doesn't affect the texture. Where using color pencils to darken a large area, you are going to add on additional texture that maybe you don't want. So yeah, I like using markers for that purpose. And then I realized when I stepped back and looked at the image that the background was starting to look very overexposed. It definitely needed more color. So I went back in with watercolors in the background to add more color and deepen the value. And I felt like that actually really helped make everything look better because the darkness of the character, it just didn't feel as dark anymore in contrast to the background. So that just goes to show how context is so important. So yeah, going into the background made me feel a little bit better about the image at this point. Because I had nothing else to really lose, I went into the face with watercolors, even though the face at this point was basically covered in color pencils. I knew that the watercolor wouldn't really adhere to the paper, and I was correct. The watercolor was very slippery, but it kind of allowed me to test things around a little bit instead of committing to any marks. Because the watercolor, I could kind of nudge things around a little bit. And yeah, I just, at this point, I really just marveled at my tenacity with illustrations. So yeah, I by this point, there's just so much color pencil on the face that it's really hard to work with, and it's hard to make any definitive marks. I feel like the little changes that I'm making are only discernible to me. So hopefully the process isn't too boring. I struggle with the nose too. I really had to battle a lot of negative self-talk throughout this piece because I just started questioning, why does this look so weird? Why is this so difficult? Why is this not coming together? Even though I have a sketch that I am happy with, even though I did a color comp that I'm happy with, why is this so hard? Why do I have to break it first, just totally mess it up, and then go through like war to basically bring it back? I still, like, after all these years, haven't figured out why the illustration process is seldom straightforward for me. I often feel like I have to mess up. I have to go through that ugly stage and battle my way through it. I don't know why I can't just have a more linear process, or I don't go through like the 10 stages of grief or whatever every time I attempt an illustration. You guys know that I haven't been making that many illustrations in the last few years. Ever since I put out my book, I've really been struggling with that. I've definitely attempted several times, but they were such catastrophic fails that I don't even want to put them out there. I don't want anyone to even see. That's how badly they turned out, and it did such a number on my confidence. Throughout this whole process, I felt so unsure, and I wasn't certain that I would actually finish this piece. But then there came a point where I was like, you know what? I think I can actually finish this. I think it's starting to kind of come together. The face doesn't look as horrid as it did. So this is a point where I was ready to go in with those finishing marks, which is the raindrops. I think when I looked at the image, it looked like the character was underwater. So instead of raindrops, I actually got the idea to draw fish as if the character is underwater. And I kind of liked how unexpected it was with the umbrella, because like why would you be holding an umbrella underwater? I normally would have agonized over this kind of big change in direction, but I was like, well, whatever, I just kind of let go. I let go of all the hopes and dreams I had, and just was like, welp, that's it, let's just finish this thing. So yeah, I decided to go in with markers for the fish because with color pencils, I figured that would take forever and markers are faster. I wanted there to be some kind of an illusion of depth between the fish. So there's one layer of fish on top of the character, and then there's another layer behind the character. And the ones in front of the fish are much bigger, and the ones behind the character are smaller to create that illusion of depth. And I have the fish in front going in one direction, and then the fish in the back going another direction, so it kind of looks like the fish are spiraling around the character. And to reinforce that separation between these two layers of fish, I made the fish in the front like purpley and blue colored, and then the fish in the back more green, so that it didn't look like just chaos. There was some sense of order and pattern. So again, I blocked in the fish with the markers, but because the markers were going on top of all these other layers of values and color, the colors felt really dulled. So I had to go in with color pencils over top to bring in some colors back and lighten up some of the values. So yeah, after I worked on the fish, I went back to the face again for one last time. Once I was moderately happy with the eyes, I really just had no more left in me to keep working on this piece. So I decided this was good enough and that I was done with it. And yeah, so this is how this piece turned out finally. You know, I do quite like how it turned out. I really like how moody the piece feels, and I do like the direction that I went with for the like finishing touches with the fish as opposed to the raindrops. So I'm glad that I allow myself to veer and take a bit of a detour, because I do like how it turned out in the end. Here's a shot where I try to show the level of texture on the paper. You can see by the shine of all the like color pencil marks how thick that layer of color pencil is. So that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed seeing this piece come together. Hopefully it wasn't as painful for you as it was for me. I am really looking forward to hearing what you guys think of everything, and with that, I will see you all in my next video. Bye!